Lewis Hamilton breaks his silence after a frustrating sprint qualifying in Austin. The Ferrari dream continues to stumble as the SF25 shows its limits once again. The 7-time world champion calls for bold changes inside Maranello. Is this the calm before Hamilton's ultimate comeback or the storm before Ferrari's reset? Lewis Hamilton's face said it all the moment he stepped out of the Ferrari in Austin. The crowd roared for the 7-time world champion, but behind the cheers, there was a quiet understanding this wasn't the Ferrari he had envisioned when he signed that historic contract. The Circuit of the Americas, shimmering under the Texan sun, became the stage for another hard lesson. The car lacked rhythm, the pace never came, and yet, somehow, Hamilton made it look respectable. 8th in sprint qualifying might not sound like a triumph, but given the car's limitations, it was a masterpiece of control and determination. Because when Hamilton drives, it's never just about the result. It's about the message. The message this weekend was clear. Ferrari needs to be bold again. Hamilton's voice carried both frustration and conviction when he told the media, "We've got to be braver." That wasn't an emotional outburst. It was the leadership of a man who has lived through every evolution of this sport. He knows what it takes to build a winning team because he has done it before, twice, with 2 different eras of Formula One cars. Now, wearing red, he's not chasing nostalgia, he's chasing rebirth. The rebirth of Ferrari as a team that dares to dream big again. Throughout the session, you could see the contrast between Hamilton and his machine. He was smooth, efficient, reading the circuit like a map he's memorized for decades. The Ferrari, however, fought him every step of the way. It twitched under braking, drifted wide in the high-speed corners, and resisted acceleration on the long straights. But even when the car protested, Hamilton found a way to keep it composed. His lap looked effortless on television, but anyone who understands the data knows it was a lap built on grit. His inputs were constant micro-corrections, millimeter-perfect control that only a driver of his caliber could maintain. After the session, as he walked down the paddock in that iconic red suit, the cameras caught something rare: Hamilton smiling softly, not out of joy, but out of acceptance. He knows this is a process. He's lived this movie before, back in 2013, when people said Mercedes would never win again. They said the same about him. A year later, he proved them wrong. That's the mindset he's brought to Maranello. Patience without complacency. He's not asking for miracles. He's building them, one meeting, one lap, one word at a time. From the very first laps of practice, Lewis Hamilton knew this wasn't going to be a smooth weekend. The Ferrari SF25, elegant in design but chaotic in execution, continued to show the same patterns that have haunted Maranello all season. Flashes of speed followed by inconsistency, promising data betrayed by on-track reality. Hamilton felt it instantly. The steering response was sharp at entry but vague at mid-corner. The rear axle felt heavy under load, and the car's balance shifted unpredictably from one sector to the next. To anyone else, that would have been overwhelming. But Hamilton has built a career out of making sense of chaos. What others see as a problem, he treats as a code to be cracked. Ferrari had arrived in Austin talking about updates, a refined floor design, a modified diffuser, new cooling solutions. On paper, it all sounded optimistic. But Formula One is not decided on paper. Once the tires hit the tarmac, Hamilton realized that the numbers from the simulator didn't match reality. The floor struggled to generate consistent downforce in the high-speed corners of the first sector, while the rear end felt unstable in the crosswinds that sweep across the Texas hills. You could hear it in his radio messages: calm, analytical, surgical. Fronts too light into turn 8, exits snappy through turn 11, he said. No panic, no anger, just pure precision. Every sentence a data point. The bigger issue, however, was philosophical. Ferrari is trapped between 2 design concepts, one chasing maximum downforce, the other chasing efficiency. The SF25 tries to do both, and as a result, it often does neither. The car performs decently in cool conditions, but when the track heats up, the balance evaporates. That's exactly what happened in Austin. As temperatures climbed past 30 degrees Celsius, the rear tires overheated, forcing Hamilton to back off mid-corner just to preserve them. The problem wasn't his driving, it was the car's thermal instability. Ferrari's engineers call it window sensitivity. Hamilton calls it what it is: limitation. What's remarkable is how he manages those limitations without ever letting frustration turn into defeat. In the garage, while other drivers storm off after a bad session, Hamilton leans in. He listens. He asks questions. He studies the telemetry with the patience of an engineer, searching for patterns in the noise. This is where his value truly shines, not just in what he does on track, but in how he transforms the energy inside the team. He doesn't need to raise his voice to command attention. His quiet authority does it for him. When Hamilton speaks, Ferrari listens. Even the most senior engineers, veterans of decades in Maranello, describe his feedback as clinical and empowering. There's also an emotional truth here that goes beyond lap times. Hamilton is not fighting just for positions, he's fighting for belief. He came to Ferrari to reignite one of the sport's most iconic names, to bring that scarlet red back to the front where it belongs. Every time the SF-25 falls short, it's not his ego that suffers, it's his sense of mission. And yet, he never shows bitterness. "We know where we are, but we also know where we can go," he said after the session. That's classic Hamilton, realistic but never resigned. It's the same tone he used at Mercedes during their rebuilding years, the same calm before the dominance. For Ferrari's engineers, that attitude is contagious. They know the car is flawed, they know the gap to Red Bull is enormous, but with Hamilton at the wheel, they also know they're in the presence of someone who's lived through this climb before. He reminds them that progress in Formula One is not linear, it's a series of small victories hidden inside painful weekends. Austin was one of those weekends. Every lap, every piece of feedback, every discussion was another brick in the foundation of what Ferrari hopes to build. And that's what makes this problem bigger than any mechanical flaw. The real challenge is not just fixing the car, it's changing the mindset. For years, Ferrari has been reactive, chasing competitors instead of leading. Hamilton wants to reverse that culture. He's not interested in copying Red Bull's ideas. He wants Ferrari to rediscover its own. The frustration he showed in Austin wasn't disappointment, it was motivation disguised as critique. He knows that to rise again, Ferrari must first admit that being good enough isn't good enough. When Lewis Hamilton joined Ferrari, he didn't just bring speed, he brought a way of thinking. Every team he's ever joined has emerged sharper, more disciplined, and more daring after his arrival. Austin was a perfect snapshot of that dynamic in motion. Behind the red garage doors, Hamilton spent nearly every spare minute dissecting data with the engineers. His laptop was open before anyone else's. While some drivers unwind after FP1, he was already overlaying telemetry traces, comparing steering inputs from the first and second runs, and asking the kinds of questions that make technicians rethink their assumptions. He wasn't just driving the SF-25, he was decoding it. What makes Hamilton so unique in the modern era of Formula One is his duality. He's both a racer and an analyst. In Austin, that duality was pushed to its limit. The car's aerodynamic inconsistencies made it behave like two different machines depending on fuel load and wind direction. Down the main straight, the drag was brutal. In the technical middle sector, the car suddenly oversteered. Most drivers would complain that it was undrivable. Hamilton did the opposite. He adjusted his driving style corner by corner, braking earlier to keep the rear stable, modulating throttle pressure with surgical precision to keep heat out of the tires. You could see it in the onboard footage. His hands were steady, his input smooth. It looked effortless, but it was the product of constant adaptation. Ferrari's technical department had introduced a revised rear wing design in Austin, hoping to reclaim some of the top-end speed lost earlier in the season. On paper, it offered less drag. In practice, it unsettled the car. The rear end became twitchy under acceleration, particularly through the fast, flowing sequence from turns 3 to 6. Hamilton's feedback was immediate and detailed. The balance changes too much with fuel load. The aero platform shifting, he reported. Those few words sent half the aerodynamic staff back to the monitors. It wasn't a complaint, it was diagnosis. Within minutes, Hamilton had helped the team identify that the new wing's center of pressure was migrating rearward under braking, throwing off the car's equilibrium. Engineers later admitted that his sensitivity to those micro imbalances was unreal. What sets Hamilton apart in these situations is not just his feel for the car, it's his calm authority. He doesn't speak like a driver guessing. He speaks like a designer who understands why things behave the way they do. During Friday's debrief, he asked the aero team to raise the front ride height by 2 millimeters, a small adjustment that reduced front-end porpoising without increasing drag. The result was subtle but crucial. The car's balance improved through the high-speed corners, allowing him to take turn 9 flat for the first time all weekend. It's those small details imperceptible to fans, monumental to engineers, that define how Hamilton operates. He doesn't look for seconds, he looks for sensations. And yet, his relationship with the team remains deeply human. Ferrari's engineers describe him as intensely curious, but never arrogant. When he walks into a meeting, he greets every technician by name. He listens first, then speaks. During one particularly long setup discussion on Saturday morning, the room was tense. The updates hadn't delivered the gains they'd hoped for. Some younger engineers looked defeated. Hamilton leaned forward and said quietly, "This is how winning teams are built. It's uncomfortable, but this is where we learn." The tone shifted instantly. That's what leadership sounds like, not loud, not dramatic, but steady and contagious. His collaboration with Charles Leclerc has also become more pragmatic than political. In Austin, both men compared data openly, something Ferrari hasn't seen in years. Leclerc's natural aggressiveness helps expose where the SF25 resists input. Hamilton's smoother technique highlights where it's efficient. Together, they're building a library of driving solutions that Ferrari can apply to next year's design. "It's the most productive we've been all season," one engineer said after qualifying. And that's no accident. Hamilton's presence has turned the driver dynamic into a technical partnership rather than a rivalry. Even in the face of disappointment, Hamilton's focus on engineering precision never wavers. After finishing 8th, he spent over an hour in debrief while other drivers had already left the paddock. He reviewed every sector, noting how the car's behavior changed with fuel and temperature. He asked the mechanics to pull suspension data for the final lap because he suspected a difference in rear damping. He was right, the left rear damper had overheated, reducing grip by less than 1%, but enough to cost 1/10 of a second. That's how deep he goes. Austin proved once again that Hamilton's gift is not just in speed, but in interpretation. He's redefining what it means to be a Formula One driver in the 21st century, less of a passenger, more of a partner. The SF25 might not be a title contender yet, but every weekend with Hamilton behind the wheel brings Ferrari closer to one. The engineers know it. The team feels it. And perhaps for the first time in years, Maranello is starting to believe not just in the car, but in the process.